I joined Kenya Broadcasting Service in 1960 from teaching. I had been a teacher. Then I served as a broadcaster in the Kenya Broadcasting Service Kisumu station until 1963 February, when I got promotion to be information officer, which meant that I had to stop broadcasting and do field work, covering stories, news, and so on. I was based in Kisumu.
I started working with the Kenya News Agency in July 1974 as an assistant information officer. We had been recruited. I had come from the University of Dar es Salaam. A team came from government to the university in Tanzania then to place those who are graduating. And because perhaps of the background I had, I was then majoring in literature. When we came back then, I was called to come and join the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting then. And I stayed in the ministry until I left in the year 2005.
I had joined the ministry in September 1969. We served at the headquarters information house in Nairobi, then went for formal training at the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication from September 70 up to September 71. We were the first lot of information officers to be trained at Kenya Institute of Mass Communication. It is an engineering group that had started. They were the pioneers of the college. Then we were the second lot to go for training at this institution.
I started working for the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting in 1966. And by then, Kenya News Agency, KNA, was part of the large ministry which comprised of Voice of Kenya, which was a department, Kenya Film Unit.
I come from West Africa. I joined KNA in 1972 at the end of the year, almost getting to the end of the year. And we used to work as an agency, supplying international agencies news.
When independence was just about, Kenya News Agency came in, was introduced, based at Information House, where stations had to send stories through the telex. I remember way back when I was doing broadcasting in Kisumu, we used to get news from Nairobi through a tape. We type it out in a typewriter, and then use it, broadcast it. You type it, you read the news. What we did locally was features, recording stories of development and traveling, visiting leaders, and getting material for broadcasting. We never did news coverage. Writing stories out and coming to broadcast. We used to broadcast things from Nairobi, except stories on features and development.
When we joined, the 3 Kenyans that were with us were taken by KBC, while I was the only one who came this way to the ministry. at Kenya News Agency. But of course, when we joined, it was the biggest graduate lot that the ministry had ever taken.
I got my first posting to Mombasa. I was the second in command to the provincial information officer. Having come, I had left Maseno having done my sixth form, and I taught for a while. So joining the ministry, I had a little background. So going to the coast, that was now my first experience in the field, and it was unbelievable because that time Kenya was pushing the tourism industry. The big hotels were opening up, the tourists were coming to Kenya, our parks, our wonderful coastline, our culture, the culture of our people. All these things were a great attraction. And at that time, the government undertook very heavy tourism promotion, and the coast was a beehive of activity when I went there. And there was a big expansion also of the ministry. We used to have an information office in Malindi, and I think Wundanyi only. But now there was expansion. We opened up Kwale, we opened up Tana River.
My first news stories was early March when I had to cover a white district commissioner in Kakamega opening a bull camp. The story had to be edited because that was my first time to report a story. Then, by then, early in March, I had been promoted to become an information officer, and later that year, in July, I was posted to Nairobi at the Department of Publications.
I opened the first information office in Lamu in 1972, and I served there up to the end of 1973. It was a wonderful experience. The coast was a unique place, so different from the upcountry where I was born, and the work was challenging because you deal with the tourism industry, which is largely foreign-based. The concept of domestic tourism had not come up. But the challenge for an information officer was projecting this thing from a perspective of Kenya's pride as a choice destination for the tourists of the time. So it was a wonderful opportunity and a great challenge, and we did well.
And, the ministry had very many functions. It had a full established editorial office, which had monthly magazines, quarterly magazines, and pamphlets. Originally, the pamphlets were in each and every language of Kenya, and it was used to pass on messages which the then rulers before independence wanted to pass to each tribe, divide and rule. So they would pass a certain message to a certain tribe so as to alienate it from the others. That was called publication section. It had magazines like Inside Kenya Today, which was quarterly, Kenya Sports Review, and these pamphlets I talked about. Then there was the wall chart, which was produced every time that a minister lost his job and a new one appointed.
We used to supply the newspapers. We were the sole suppliers of news. In those days, they didn't have their reporters, and so the coverage of news was done at KNA.
Then we had the photographic section. The photographic section took care of most of the photographs that were supplied to the newspapers. And it also had a photographic library where a lot of people came to buy photographs because there were only two newspapers at that time, Nation and Standard. And they didn't have established photographic sections. Then there was the library, where a lot of books were donated. So that was what we knew as KNA. But KNA as a section was a fully-fledged editorial office with the reporters and editors, and then transmission was by telex. I don't know if you have heard of